Welcome back, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Terrible Towel Tuesday. I am your host, Sim Football Critic, and let's jump right into it, guys. So, again, not a whole lot to talk about, man, but there's a few things that are just, spark our interest a little bit that we will discuss here today, and hopefully you guys will leave your comments. I can respond to them, and, I'm always, looking forward to what you guys have to say, enjoy what you guys have to say, so please don't hesitate to do that, and I'll try to respond to as many comments as possible. Now, a couple things I just want to talk about really quick before I get into, what I titled the video there. Definitely wanted to rehash again, some more of the, the news as far as the rules. We know about the catch rule and things of that nature, but I've been thinking a little bit more, guys, about, definitely thinking a little more about the, the head-to-head contact and things like that. And I'm having somewhat of a difference of opinion, not saying that I would prefer it to be that way, but when I kind of look at it from a different perspective, right? I get what they're trying to do, and I feel like that it's a direct result from what we saw happen to Ryan Shazier. I understand it from that perspective. My only concern, man, is how are they going to police it? That's my only concern. How are they going to police the head-to-head contact? You're taught from a very early age. You see what you're hitting. Keep your eyes up, keep your head up. Then, use the right or left shoulder, particularly you want to, put your head on the opposite side of where they're running. So basically, if you're going to tackle the guy, with the right shoulder, you want your head to be on the inside of the body and such things of that nature. I get it. My only concern, though, is at what point does it come subjective? Where does it become subjective? Because we still heard that they still have things that they have to hash out about the rule as far as what the language will be, which to me is kind of strange that you would pass the rule before even having the language down. But anyway, what we're going to do. All right, so because I actually have a notation here, man. I heard the president from the Packers. Let me pull it up here, guys. Let's see, where do I have it here? Bear with me. Here it is, guys. The president from the Packers, his name is Mark Murphy. Mark Murphy said that the competition committee only found 5 hits last season that would have been ejections under the new rules. That's very interesting, because I find it hard to believe, based on what they're saying the rule is, that you only found 5 hits. You think you would find that easily in one football game, one Sunday with multiple games being played. But if it's going to be officiated that way, and you can look at a whole season, last season, and say, hey, only 5 of those games or 5 instances would have resulted in ejections. Like, they, of course, that I overheard as well, from another source. I think Dave Bryan was saying this on the Terrible Podcast, that the Ryan Shazier tackle, even though he got injured, that would have been, an injection would have been given based on the new rules. If that's the case, man, if it's only 5, it doesn't sound like it would be overly crazy, but we're going to have to wait and find out what the final language will be, as well as we'll have to wait and see how they're going to officiate it. But I understand it, man. I think from a safety standpoint, I think it's very reactionary, again, to the Ryan Shazier situation. The guy from Green Bay, I think it was Devontae Adams, I believe, he had a scary, instance last year as well. So I see what they're trying to do. I guess the owners are figuring very quickly that, the optics is going to be important in terms of the success of their league going forward. So I get it. I'm just concerned on how it will be officiated. So we'll see what's going on with that. And I wanted to touch real quick, man, as well on the Le'Veon Bell news. Just really quick, guys. I did an independent video about that. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I'll put a link here in the description. You probably saw a link just scroll across the screen there. If you want to check that out, I got my full thoughts there. But basically, man, it's come out that he's asking for $17 million. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening with the Steelers. It's reported that the Steelers are offering $15 million. And, I feel like he needs to meet him somewhere in the middle. But hey, I'm not going to tell a man what to do with his money. I just think in this climate, the way it works right now, I understand what he's trying to do, trying to set a new precedent. I don't blame him for that. But I think $17 million per year is going to be pretty hard to come by from any team, especially if he plays this year on the tag and next year he's 27 years old. Is he still going to get that amount of money at that age? I don't see it happening, but hey, I wish him the best. I hope he could be a Steeler for the remaining of his career, but we'll see what happens. You know, I just don't believe the Steelers are going to move at that amount. That needle is not going to move much further than $15 million if that is what's being reported. However, you know, they could free up some more cap space if they do get a deal done, obviously. And maybe they structure it in a way to where Le'Veon Bell gets a chunk in the first 2 years, and then, you know, it kind of, you know, it's a little bit lesser the remaining of the contract. You know, the Steelers always find a good way to structure these things to where, you know, you get X amount of dollars early on, and then it makes it easier for you to cut later, or the dead money is not as big or as much of a burden. So we'll see. If for whatever reason they decide to pay him that much, I'm sure they're going to structure it in a way to where it doesn't, you know, kill him down the road. But I wouldn't expect him to be signed at $17 million per year. We'll see. Now, what I really want to talk about, guys, is the question I have in the title there. How would you react? What would be your feelings if the Steelers actually draft Derrius Guice? What would be your actual feelings, guys, if the Steelers drafted Derrius Guice, who's one of the guys that some people are saying the Steelers are showing huge interest in? I've seen a couple mocks with him being the first round pick for the Steelers. How would you guys feel about that if we actually went running back? That's a good question, right? But here's the thing to think about. You know, I've said this last week, if I'm not mistaken. The Steelers have now put themselves in position where they're not in a position where they have to draft for need. They don't have to draft for need. At this point, they can draft based off of talent. They can draft based off of the highest person on their board because, again, I think Burnett and Bostic are Band-Aids, you know, and Band-Aids to the effect to where I think the Steelers, if necessary, they feel like, you know what, we don't have to bust our gun early. You know, these guys are capable starters for the next 1 or 2 years. You know, we can wait and try to reload or reboot in those areas then. Or they, at the very worst, they may feel like they can get those positions later on in the draft. So I think the number one pick, you know, the first round pick is wide open. But I want to know, how would you guys feel if it is a running back? First off, I would think that there wouldn't be any Le'Veon Bell contract. That would just be my gut feeling. The second thing, man, is we know that the Steelers like to get guys on the field early now. So I would be a little concerned on whether or not Guice is going to play. You know, would you want to draft a talent like that in the first round and he's really not going to be the main guy? Because obviously Le'Veon Bell, unless the Steelers were to rescind the tag, I don't see that happening, but you never know. They pick a first round running back, you never know. But let's assume that they're not going to do that and they're going to keep Bell on the roster. Why would you draft a guy like Guice and, you know, allow him to really not get the bulk of the carries? I don't see that, all right? But I wouldn't feel that bad about it. I mean, hey, if this guy is the guy that you've identified, I think he's an excellent back, good size, you know, good combination of speed, power, etc. You know, played in the SEC. I wouldn't mind having him, but would be very curious to know why they felt like they would have to get him in the first round when there's definitely going to be other running backs, definitely in the second round, and even as late as third and fourth that you could get. So that would tell me a lot, man, if they did jump out there and they drafted Guice that early. I'm saying his name correctly now. But yeah, that would very, very much surprise me. As well, again, I want to touch on the Randolph thing. Mason Randolph. Here's something that I heard today as well when I listened to the Terrible Podcast. And shout outs to those guys over there, man. I listen to a lot of different mediums, a lot of different beat writers and things like that, so I can get as much information as necessary along with the information I research myself. Here's an interesting point. I told this to Tony, and I think I said this last week, guys, about, you know, when Roethlisberger was being drafted, he was not slated to be the guy, you know, and I kind of left it at that. But here's some more in-depth information that I found out today. So Dan Rooney was really the one who shifted the focus on to Ben Roethlisberger. You know, they're saying that Dan Rooney was a guy who was really, really, really saying we need to jump on Roethlisberger. At that time, Shane Andrews was the guy, you know, reportedly that the Steelers were looking at, offensive lineman out of Arkansas, right? And again, Dan Rooney, even up until the point of the draft, his influence, he was like, we need to jump on Roethlisberger. Let's take Roethlisberger. And they took Roethlisberger. Now, here's the interesting thing. When the Steelers took him, they had 3 quarterbacks under contract, right? They had drafted Brian St. Pierre the year before. They had Tommy Maddox, and they had Charlie Batch. And based on the information I heard earlier, they said that Batch was the one that was expected to be the backup. So Roethlisberger wasn't even going to be in the backup position. You know, eventually what happened was, you know, St. Pierre got put on the practice squad, and, you know, Charlie Batch ended up going on IR before the season started. And then Roethlisberger was the backup, and, you know, going into the season with Maddox. Maddox gets hurt, and we know the rest. The rest was history. Here comes the birth of Ben Roethlisberger. But think about what I'm saying there. Doesn't that sound very close to what the Steelers currently have in place right now? They drafted a quarterback last year in Dobbs, okay? They already have Ben Roethlisberger as the starter in Landry Jones. So, like I said last week, I hope this doesn't happen, but I could see a connection to where the Steelers might go Mason Randolph if they really think he is the guy. Because you would expect that Randolph and probably Lamar Jackson, you know, out of the top 6 quarterbacks, those would probably be the 2 guys that would probably be around, you know, right around that pick. You would think that these guys would be available. So if they're there, one of those 2 guys would be the guy that the Steelers would take if they're looking quarterback. I think the Steelers would be more apt to take Mason Randolph than Lamar Jackson. That's just my opinion. You know, I think they would go more with that type of quarterback, body type, etc., style of play. So don't be surprised if they do it. Now, me personally, guys, I still feel like I would not go quarterback that early unless Randolph is the guy that you want, or a Donald or somebody like that falls, which I doubt it, but maybe. But I just feel like, again, man, I've said this for a couple of weeks now, with Bostic, with Burnett, it gives you the flexibility of taking the best player at 28 and not necessarily the need. And I would feel like the best player at 28 might be better than what you would expect as far as grabbing a quarterback right now. But then again, if they're high on whoever's there and they take them, it is what it is. I wouldn't be excited about it, but I would understand it given the information I provided earlier. They may go that route because it's eerily similar to what happened when Roethlisberger got drafted. They identified that this could be a guy. It worked out for them, obviously. So if they follow that same pedigree, you never know. You never know. So we'll see, man. Right now, again, most of the mocks that I'm seeing, I still see a lot of people having the Steelers take an inside backer. Vander Esch, as well as Rashaan Evans are the guys who are jumping out. I don't know if the Steelers go safety that early now. You know, I did hear that Nat Beret, I think I'm saying his name correctly, he's visiting the Steelers on today. I'm sure that's just going to be a special teams option, even though he can play some safety. To me, looking at his career and looking at what he's done and how good a special teams player he's been, it's basically removing Robert Golden and filling Robert Golden's spot with Beret. So right there. I mean, then you still have a backup safety, if you will. So I think even the safety position might be later on. You know, later on in the draft, a guy like Deshaun Elliott, you know, is a guy that's not being talked about as much. He might be around 3rd round, 3rd, 4th round possibly. So I still think the Steelers may, you know, make a play at safety. Again, unless they're really, really, really high on Jesse Bates or Justin Reed, one of these guys, they might take them in the 1st round. You know, I really don't know how to call it. You know, this is one of the toughest years for me to even speculate. But my gut feeling is that if one of the inside linebackers is there, you know, one of the guys like Vander Esch, Rashaan Evans, maybe even Malik Jefferson, somebody of that nature, I think the Steelers might go that direction. But I will not rule out a Ronnie Harrison if he's still there. You know, we'll see. But that's my gut feeling right now, guys. And, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. You know, we don't have that much longer until the draft. So hopefully we can put all of this to rest and all of this to bed very early. But we'll see what our guys are going to do. All right, so that's about all I have for right now. I'm trying to think, guys, if there's anything else I left off that I wanted to cover today. Like I said, we talked about the catch rule pretty well last week. I think that's about it. You know, I think that's about it. I do know that the Steelers, I think they have some schedules this week as far as pre-draft visits. But as far as free agents, like I said, Nate Beret, Nathaniel Beret, is visiting with the Steelers. So perhaps by the time you see this video, he may be a Steeler, and I'm not mad at that. Go ahead and get that veteran minimum and get somebody in there to help out on special teams. So I'm not mad at what the Steelers are doing right now. Oh, I will say this. If the Steelers do draft a safety and if Beret is signed, I think Wilcox is gone. Because again, his salary, I think, is about $3 million. They could do without that and open up some cap space if they sign Beret, again, which would be a backup. And then if they do go safety at all in the draft, I think then that's the end of J.J. Wilcox. Just my opinion. All right, but we'll see. So, all right, guys, that's going to take care for this particular episode and this week. I look forward to you guys' comments and, replying back to you guys, and always like talking Steeler talk with you guys. So definitely make sure you're active down in the comments. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Cut on your notifications so you know when new videos are available. And I promise, guys, it will never hurt you to hit that like button. All right, before we get out of here, let's get a Here We Go Steelers. And we'll catch you next week for Terrible Towel Tuesday. All right, y'all be good. Peace.